Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. The Draft Professor is the only interactive mock draft simulator. The interactive mock draft simulator has fans mock drafting against the picks of other fans every time you do a mock. This is a first round challenge, which has fans identify their 5 best first-round picks, and fans of the other 31 teams will be mock drafting against your preferred first-round pick. There is a second-round challenge on the simulator, which allows fans to identify their 10 best 2-round drafts, and this will adjust the draft board so that fans of other teams are mock drafting against your best first and second round picks. The Draft Professor has ranked players functionality. This allows users to rank players at their positions and group them in tiers to be able to compare with other draft boards. The Draft Professor has draft a team functionality, as you see here. Draft a team allows 2 or more users to each snake draft a 22-player team, and you can use this to identify your my guys or identify the depth of your draft board, and it allows users to do a mock draft a much different way than any other draft simulator. Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. This episode will begin shortly. Thank you. We are live. I'm joined by Bill, Randall, and Cole. And this is our final wide receiver corner episode. So, Bill and Randall, if you didn't know this, we've been doing this since October 18th.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's like 2 months ago.
Feels like time flew by.
Yeah. And Cole, thank you for joining us for the last 2. So thank you. So, Bill, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. We're here Friday night. I got college football playoff pulled up, Indiana, Notre Dame. As a guy who is a resident of Indiana, this is my, this is my Roman Empire, as they would call it. 2 Indiana teams fighting a couple of days before Christmas in a snow-filled South Bend. It's a good time, but we're also going to talk some wide receivers and cornerbacks, so it's just icing on the cake for me.
So, Randall, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. A little sad now. Bill, it's been a long time since we've been doing wide receivers and cornerbacks, so I don't know what I'm going to do on Fridays anymore. Like, just sit here and pretend?
Yeah, you're just going to show up and no one will be here.
Yeah, it'll just be my own room.
We're going to get to watch Bill and Cole do Senior Bowl.
Oh, there you go. I'm in.
Yeah.
I'll be watching.
Cole, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm not going to lie. I'm actually ready to move on from wide receivers. I've watched about 72 hours worth of them in the last 5 days, so I kind of want to rip my eyes out, but you know how it goes.
Cool. Well, we have a lot coming at you today. So we're going to be covering 5 wide receivers and 5 corners. And I should say we're going to cover 5 corners. Then we're going to cover 5 wide receivers. It's a pretty good group, especially the wide receiver group. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing. And we definitely saved some good corners for last. Then once this podcast ends, we're going to take about a 5 or a 10-minute biology break. And we're going to come back and all 4 of us are going to show you our wide receiver boards. And that'll probably be like a 25 to 45-minute discussion. And it's probably not going to be 25 because there's nothing with this group that's only going to take 25 minutes. So
we're just that passionate.
We are going to get started covering Travis Hunter. And Travis Hunter is he's unique in that he's going to start the podcast and he's going to close it. So we're going to separate the scouting reports and we're going to talk about Travis Hunter, the corner, first. And we're going to close the episode with Travis Hunter, the wide receiver. So if you're here for Travis Hunter, you got to stay for the beginning and the end. right? And we got a lot of good stuff coming in the middle. But Bill, you want to kick off Travis Hunter, the cornerback?
Absolutely. So Travis Hunter, the cornerback, 6'1", 185. This is a guy who has really good click and close ability, can plant his foot and just drive on a wide receiver, drive on a pass very easily. He also has really good transitional footwork with his back pedal. There's just zero wasted movement. It is clean. It is crisp. There's no issues with his mechanics. In addition, he's got this really rare reactive athletic ability. It allows him to mirror receivers easily. Like with one arm tied behind his back, he's able to mirror them that well. He also has a really good football IQ in terms of bait techniques. There's several times I watched him this season where he easily baited a quarterback into throwing a pass when he just click and closed and drove on that ball. Now, he is a top prospect. There is probably one knock on him, and it's his tackling technique and its consistency. Sometimes he leads with his shoulder too often instead of wrapping up, but it's very nitpicky. Overall, this is a guy you can put him in man coverage, zone coverage. You could put him in press man coverage. There's no drop off. He is not only my top cornerback, but he is my top overall prospect on my entire big board. He is 101 when it comes to the 2025 NFL draft cycle. But Cole, what do you have on Travis Hunter, the corner?
Yeah, so I am a little bit lower on Travis Hunter as a player in general. Specifically as a corner, you see the zone pops out on tape easily. Athletic, smart, super smart. His back pedal's smooth. His hips are smooth. He's sticky in coverage. Specifically, his zone coverage, he can play two zones at once. It's an anomaly. You don't see that. It's like if a defensive back was a wide receiver running a choice route. He chooses his zone, and it works every single time. I do see a little bit of a drop off in his man coverage. Just kind of, I don't know if it's based on his weight. He's a little bit thinner, and like Bill said with the tackling, it's some technical things, but I do think a lot of it has to do with his weight, and his physicality is not up there with two guys that I do think are more physical than him in this class. Overall, he's like my number. Let me look. He is my number 7 prospect in the class, and he's my number 2 corner, just behind Darian Porter out of Iowa State.
Randall.
That's a good take. Yeah, I do love that. I'm kind of more on Bill's side. I do see. I mean, you guys are right. The insane IQ in zone is nuts. It is fun to watch. Like that interception he had when he dove out in front is pretty much a good reference of what you were talking about, Cole, on covering two zones in that choice. He covered basically three wide receivers on that sideline, and then he chose, that flat route. He got it right because his IQ is so high, and got that interception. That was like one of the most impressive things when it came to his zone. But, trying to understand and watch Travis Hunter is kind of like picking the bad games to watch and then and trying to figure it out. And so I kind of picked the bad games, like Colorado State. He had a good game, but he had a lot of targets at him. So I was watching that. And then, going back to 2023 and looking at his game against Stanford and looking at the improvement of what he was in 2023 to 2024, because that game was kind of atrocious, even though he was, oversized by Iomanner. He still kind of looked elementary in that game sort of thing. So I think from 2023 to 2024, I think he improved much better in his man coverage and how he takes it. In press man, he's much more physical, plays with his hands more than I think in 2023. So I think the ascension in man should be noted as well. And you guys kind of covered everything. And on a statistical standpoint, it shows what his tape shows: 4 interceptions, 7 pass breakups. On an island, only allowing 205 yards this year on 38 targets. He's keeping everything in front of him. And I love how he does keep everything in front of him on zone and man. He'll watch it, and he may not be a good tackler, but he has that patience and that drive to stop yards after the catch, which I enjoy watching as well. I am more on Bill's side. He is my number 1 prospect, number 1 cornerback. And then, and I think he's probably the most surefire top 5, because quarterbacks are so crazy this year. And you know that quarterbacks will be reached for, even though they shouldn't. So I would say Travis Hunter is that more safe top 5 in my head.
Cool. So, a couple questions. So, and I'll go from Randall to Cole, and then Bill, you'll be the third. So, Randall, when you see a corner that's 6'1", 185, what is your ideal size for a corner?
Probably 5 to 7 pounds more, but around that height, 6'2", 6'1", 193 sort of thing. 195 is mine.
Yeah. Cole, how about you? What's your ideal size for a corner?
For talking boundary, 6'1", 190, 190 to 200, 6'2". Slots, I do tend to go to like that 5'10", 5'11", 190, 200 range. So it varies.
Okay, so Bill.
Yes.
How many corners that are, let's say, I'm going to call Travis Hunter a small corner. He is not the smallest corner, but his size is, let's say, under some of the thresholds. So how many smaller corners have gone really high in round 1, and kind of what's your comp for them still?
So I will tell you this, his size, 6'1", 185, some people might think it's a little bit of a detriment, but the last time a corner that weighed around that size and height weight range, got to go back to 1999. 7th overall, the Washington Redacteds selected Champ Bailey, who is my comp for Travis Hunter. So we often talk about size and how it can be a detriment to some players, but if you have the ability and the skill set to use your size to an effective advantage, like Champ Bailey was able to do in Washington and in Denver, the size can get a little overblown. Now, if this was a 170, 175, I'd have some concern. At 185, the same exact frame as Champ Bailey, same skill set and coverage. Champ Bailey also played both ways at Georgia. So it's not far-fetched to think this is Champ Bailey 2.0. But yeah, that was probably the last time in 1999 where you saw a corner of this size and height threshold go in the first round, which I think it ended up pretty well, I would think. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Cool. Okay, so here's a bad draft joke, but does that mean that we're going to see Travis Hunter traded for a running back after about year 5?
If he ends up in Jacksonville, absolutely.
If people didn't know, Champ Bailey was traded for a running back, Washington to Denver.
Yeah,
but
if he goes to Jacksonville, absolutely, I can see it in 3.5 years. Jacksonville will trade for a 6th round running back.
There you go.
Okay, so Bill, you want to kick off Jason Marshall Jr. from Florida?
Yeah, so Jason Marshall Jr. from Florida, 6'1", right around the 200-pound mark. This is a guy, he's got that prototypical length that you look for in your corners. He's got that size profile that you'd want as well. I think he excels best in press man coverage when he uses long arms to keep wide receivers at bay. He also shows really good ball awareness and skills in zone coverage, turning his head around to find the ball very quickly, very easily. He also got very good route recognition and good closing speed for a corner. Allows him to jump short routes and even in some of the intermediate pretty effectively. My big concern with him is he doesn't have the elite long speed, which is concerning for a guy of his height. It seems like he's a bit of a longer strider, which I should see that catch up, but I just don't see it. He also relies too often on his physical tools and doesn't let his technique do the work because it's good technique. But he says, hey, I have these long arms. I have this physical skill set. I'm going to take it apart. In addition to that, I would like to see him be more consistent as a tackler. There's too many times where I just see him just shoulder tackle somebody. It leads to a broken tackle and a missed tackle. All in all, with Jason Marshall, this is a guy that's firmly at the top of my day 3 big board, right around the beginning parts of round 4. Comp for him would be like a Kobe Bryant for the Seattle Seahawks. Very physical, man press style of corner that you can put on the boundary. But Randall, what did you have on Jason Marshall?
Yeah, I like the man, press man for sure. I think his combine is going to do him numbers. So as much as when I was watching the tape, if he has a high RAS with his length and his speed and his shuttle and everything along those lines, I think it might be a little bit of fool's gold, in my opinion. So I wouldn't trust the combine numbers to what his tape is. I do like him in press man. I like him in zone. I do think that in zone, sometimes he jumps the gun too much on receivers and gets lost in space sometimes. He can be coached out of it. If he gets beat, he sometimes holds on to the receiver and stuff like that. Throughout his collegiate career, on wide receivers, their yards per reception when he's closest in 2023 was 15.7, and then in 2024 it was 24.2. So when he gets beat, it's more of those intermediates, and he kind of gets it beat at the stem, and then he gives up those big plays. So that was one of the concerning yellow flags I had for him. He did get cut. He stopped this year in week 8, if I'm not corrected, was it a torn labrum? So
Yes.
He's got surgery on that. So I'm curious about his medicals on there. And then gray flag would be he's from Florida. He chose Miami or Florida to stay in Florida. So hopefully maybe the northern teams wonder how he does in the cold. That's not a dome.
Mm-hmm.
But, that could always be a problem,
Yeah.
hint Miami Dolphins. So I do have like an early day 3 grade on him because I do like his length and I do like his speed. I kind of saw the opposite on the long speed. I saw him be able to trail and recover on his long speed. So I didn't see too much on that. But Cole, how about you?
Yeah. So this is a guy I really, really liked him about in October. Have not finished regrading about one more game for him. So what I'm saying is from my scouting report from October. But I really loved his physicality. Super, super physical. Gets up in your face on jams. Press man is no issue for Jason. Prototypical size. I really, really like his change of direction in his feet and hips. I think that they are very, very loose, and it's something that I think his shuttle will boost his RAS if he chooses to run that because of his lateral speed. Long speed wise, I think he's okay. I'm kind of in the middle between you two. I see times where he is where he's doing well trailing, and I see times where he's just not. And I think that attributes to his steps kind of being odd towards like the second or third. He can kind of get a little wonky in his back pedal. Those intermediate in breaking routes, there was a dig. I forget what game. Just it got him, kind of what Randall said with that 24 yards allowed. I forget the exact stat. But yeah, I really like Jason Marshall. I'm higher than Bill and Randall. It sounds like I kind of have that like 3rd to 4th round grade on him. I have a small comp for him, and it's JC Horn, specifically JC Horn when he was in his first year and 2 with Phil Snow in that system. That was very press man heavy. Because you do kind of see these things with JC Horn in zone coverage where he can come back to the ball and make these plays, but those in breaking routes he can get kind of lost on.
I love that.
Yeah, and to build on what Cole said, this is a player I think that hit some preseason hype because I think I saw him in the top 60 on numerous boards coming into the season. And now we're seeing somewhere between the injuries and let's say more scouts have their eyes on him. He's moving back a little, right? Or you could say other players have ascended to where he was in the top 60 preseason. So I think a lot of people had their eyes on him for more than a year. If he was top 60 coming in, in May or June. So that seems to make sense to me. So next player, Randall, do you want to kick off Kolbey Taylor from Vanderbilt?
Definitely. Kolbey Taylor, Vanderbilt, 6'3", 185. I saw 190. He's a 3-star prospect into a 3-star transfer, started Wyoming, went to Vanderbilt. He was on the 2023 Bruce Feldman freak list. He did a broad jump, 11'2", has a vertical over 40 inches. That's impressive. I heard that he may run under a 440 as well on the 40. So that obviously deserves to be on Feldman's freak list. With that athletic prowess, he does do well in man coverage, being able to mirror his wide receivers a little bit. On 24 receptions, he's only allowed 262 yards, with the longest catch being a 25-yarder. So he does like to keep things in front of him, which I always love. He is a sound tackler. He's got 52 tackles, and with 42 of those just being solo. So he can tackle well, But my issue with that is when he's in the run defense, he has bad angles. I believe I was watching, it was Vanderbilt and Missouri, and he was taking bad angles on the run support, and they were gaining, 10 to 15 yards, and I did not enjoy that personally. Zone coverage needs some work on his IQ, and I did, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill or Cole, but I did also see some character issues a little bit. I believe in 2023, he was suspended for a game when he left after like 28 snaps and didn't play the game afterwards. He did take full responsibility on it, and he was like, "That's on me. I'm going to become a better person." But then I have seen some other things post that in 2024 that also did have it, and in an internal matter, obviously nothing came out about it, but he did leave Virginia Tech for a non-injury related issue again. So I'm curious to see how those interviews go in the offseason. And I saw kind of average play in general. But Cole, how about you?
Yeah, so the only game I have watched is the Alabama game, both watching as a fan and both watching as an evaluator. So I know for a fact he's physical. He has a high motor on tackles. Tackling will not be an issue for Kolbey Taylor. Super long build, 6'3". He's filled out well, so I do tend to think he might be closer to that 190, 192-ish range rather than 185. His man coverage, don't really see many problems. He's a solid man defender. His zone coverage is where I kind of did start finding issues. I think there was a route. It might have been on him that Ryan Williams made that superb catch on the sideline. I'm not sure if that's correct, but I'm pretty sure about that. And when I was watching it, it looked like a quarters play, and he just got lost finding the ball, which is really odd for a man coverage corners. They don't normally get lost finding the ball, but for some reason, Kolbey Taylor's ball skills kind of go down in that zone coverage range. And I don't know if that's because he's like so amped up and just is trying to be sticky and he just can't find it, or if that just attributes to a lower gameplay IQ than some of these other guys on our boards in this list tonight.
Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kolbey Taylor, he's got that size that you look for, 6'3", 185. He does have the ability to play outside or inside in the slot. He probably is going to be a boundary corner with that size, but you could play him both in and out. I think he's probably most effective in press coverage situations. That's probably the best use of him, press man especially. He's not a dominant tackler, but he is a willing one, like Randall talked about. He is willing to mix it up in the run game. The biggest thing that's a negative for me from him is I saw it too consistently, his transition from a back pedal into a burst. Most guys, there's a little bit of hiccup between the two. Kolbey's is a full-on clunky, like he has to stop, reset, then burst through it, which that's going to hinder his ability to react pretty quickly to a receiver on a given route. Randall, I'm glad you talked about the character concerns. So Kolbey has a reputation in and around the Vanderbilt and Nashville community. I've got some Tennessee sources that say he's very fiery, plays with his hair like it's on fire in practice, can be very chit-chatty, I guess would be the proper form of it. But based on that suspension and violation of team rules, from my sources, they stated that it was an altercation with one of his teammates during the game. Defensive coaches had to escort him out of the huddle, take him into the locker room, and he was suspended for that next half of the first game, which I believe was Alcorn State. But it'll be something that's going to have to be answered for during, like you said, during the combine, during those postseason bowls. Teams are going to ask about it. All in all, this is a guy I would have on day 3 just because the talent is there, the size profile is there, right around probably the end of round 4, start of round 5. My comp for him is kind of like an Eli Apple, but not the burnt toast version of Eli Apple. If you give him the good parts, the press corner coverage, the man coverage, that's what I would say Kolbey Taylor looks like.
Cool. Okay. Wow. Okay. So my mouse was moving a little bit too quickly there. Apologize. Ricardo Hallman from Wisconsin. So, Bill, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah. So Ricardo Hallman from Wisconsin, Parker and I talked about him on one of our DB breakdowns over on Tuesday nights, which just to make sure, if you're watching this, make sure you like and subscribe to the Draft Professor YouTube channel, where you can catch me and Parker talking about DBs over on Tuesday nights. So Ricardo Hallman, this is a guy, very smooth back pedal, very controlled, keeps his leverage and cushion in the pedal. He's got loose hips to swivel and turn with the best of them. And he has really good ball skills. He can track the ball really well while it's in the air, stays calm. Even when his back's to the ball, it's status quo for him. The big negative, he is undersized. We've talked about it in the episode, and he's undersized in terms of his height at 5'10". Like I talked about with the episode with Parker, this is a guy that you're probably going to use exclusively in the slot. I'd be concerned about using him as a boundary corner, because you're asking a 5'10" guy to cover a 6'4" DK Metcalf. It's not going to end well for you in any way, shape, or form. I do also see him inconsistently open field tackling, diving at legs of ball carriers when he could just as easily wrap them up in the hips, and has the ability to do so. But all that being said, based on his coverage skills alone, this is a guy that I have firmly in the round 3 range, probably closer to the end of round 3. My comp for him is kind of similar to an Asante Samuel Jr. if he was on a little bit smaller scale and a little bit better of a coverage guy, a little bit worse of a tackler. But Randall, what did you see on Ricardo Hallman?
Yeah, I saw really good things. I saw a lot better things in 2023. His numbers in 2023 were really good based on his 2024 numbers. He had 7 in 2023. He had 7 interceptions, 3 pass breakups, while allowing a passer rating of 37, which was solid. 2024, he's allowed 4 touchdowns, passer rating 123. But I kind of went through his 2023 to kind of do some more digging, because I kind of like that better. Got a good back pedal. He does have really quick feet to jump on short curls and slants, which I really love. You are right. The tackling is not great. One-on-one tackling is almost not there, sort of thing. He has 17 tackles with 6 defensive stops, but he has a missed tackle rate of 30%. So we're talking, 1 in 3 tackles are missed, sort of thing. I also had him as a slot corner, and I know that I think we did talk about this right before, and I apologize, but he does actually have another opportunity, another year. He's a redshirt junior, and he was in an interview in late November, and he said he's going to walk for senior. He wants to walk for senior night, but he's still unsure if he's going to declare or not. I had him as staying another year and then trying to get that in there. I had him as a mid-round 4 guy, and then he had with the opportunity to get back in the top 100. But if he doesn't, I had him around mid-round 4. How about you, Cole?
Yeah, so I've watched Oregon and Alabama for Ricardo Hallman, so I have an idea of where I'd select him. He's like everything that Bill and Randall both said with his coverage instincts and where he should play is the slot. One key point I do want to point out is that he kind of can get lost on those more abstract routes. I'm not exactly positive what route it was, but Jeremy Bernard towards the back end of the second quarter, I think it was like 13 seconds left. It was a deep post corner or it was a deep flag. And it was kind of a route where Ricardo Hallman just got lost. He got his back turned and Jeremy Bernard made a nicer cut. And a flag route is kind of more of that, like, it's not a corner, it's a deep reverse post, pretty much, if you want to look at it that way. And Ricardo Hallman did get kind of lost, and I have seen him bite on double moves a little bit more than I would like, but it's going to happen to every corner. So I'd kind of have that idea of where I'd play him in the slot. I'd prefer him in a more zone-friendly defense, just because he is smart and he's relatively athletic, but he's smaller and you can't really put him in press. Off man, he's solid, but I really like where he could be as a player in a couple of years if he's any zone-friendly defense. I'd probably select him towards that, like, Kalen Carson, Chow Smith-Wade, round 5, round 6 area right now. Speaking of Chow Smith-Wade, that is actually my comp for Ricardo Hallman. So.
Cool. Okay, so Cole, do you want to kick off Trey Amos from Ole Miss?
Absolutely. I love Trey Amos. Back for my scouting report in October, I have one more game for him for my updated one. Super fluid, just an amazing athlete. And it was common because he came from Alabama. previously from, I think, UL Monroe. But to be an Alabama corner, you have to be smart. That Nick Saban scheme's no joke. I mean, man on demand, all those advanced coverages, cover 7, mod, everything like that. So he's super smart, super athletic. That's another Nick Saban staple. He reminds me of another Alabama corner, Terrion Arnold, came out last year, in that he's physical, he can play zone, he can play man. I believe he might have been a safety at UL Monroe. I'm not sure if that's correct, but I feel like I saw that somewhere. So anybody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But he does kind of play like his hair's on fire. He's always running around. He's always trying to make a play, and sometimes it can bite him in the butt. And sometimes he is a little bit too physical, and it can lead to problems with penalties or getting too handsy. Right now, I'd probably say Amos is a top 60, 75 player for me. But yeah, I really, really do like Trey Amos.
So, Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, no, Cole hit the nail on the head with Trey Amos on a lot of things. I really love his loose hips and how fluid he is in transitioning from a back pedal to turning and running with guys. You saw it a lot at Ole Miss. It was very effective. He also does have a pretty strong punch and reroute ability at the line of scrimmage and press coverage. I think it's probably one of his better skills. My biggest issue is that I see him lose a lot of discipline in double moves, and he bites on double moves extremely hard, especially when quarterbacks are able to manipulate him with their eyes. And part of that is the play with his hair on fire and the aggression that Cole talked about, and part of it is just losing spatial awareness. I'm a little lower on Trey than Cole is. I have him in the round 4 range, but this is a guy that right at the first part of day 3, I think can easily fit onto a team that runs a lot of man and some zone schemes as well. Kind of like an AJ Boye when he was with the Houston Texans, kind of guy that could do a lot of good things, didn't excel in one given area, but kind of did a lot of good things for you. Randall, what do you have on Trey Amos?
Yeah, I think I'm closer to Cole on it. And Cole, he played 17 free safety snaps in his career, so I think he was more still cornerback for the Raging Cajuns. But I think he has versatility in it. I'm a little more on Cole's side. I really like Trey Amos. I hope he does well. So we could just say famous Amos the whole entire time. But he's sticking coverage. He's great at it. The most yards he's given up this year is 56 total in the game, which is great. He's smooth. He's got quick back pedal. He's physical at the line of scrimmage and the stem to help leverage on his routes, which I love. He moves quickly at the line of scrimmage to help with run support. He can work on his tackling technique, but he does get it done in college. He has 3 forced fumbles in his collegiate career, so he does attack that ball with a good punch. Long arms and length is what I really like in his press man, and for his vertical routes, he stays fighting constantly in the first 5, and then he can do well in the trail with his speed. I think the combine will do really well for him. 11 pass breakups this year, keeping everything in front of him with only allowing 288 yards and 31 receptions. I have him as a mid-round 2 guy. I think he goes right around there.
Yeah, and to build on that, I know that Dean, who's a Jacksonville fan, and he does Draft Professor, he was calling for Amos for Jacksonville's 2nd-round pick, which would be early round 2. So, I did a mock draft, and I didn't have a corner early for Jacksonville, and Dean said you needed to do Amos in round 2. So, I think that round 2 range is going to be where I think we're going to see a lot of people suggesting that that's his sweet spot. So,
did we have one of our guys put him in the 1st round?
I know there was discussions in the chat about him first, but it was late first. It was kind of like the playoff team first.
Yeah.
I will say this is a very Brian Flores type player.
Mm-hmm. You get that? It's a Flores guy through and through.
So, Cole, I'm going to have you kick off Jayden Higgins because I have a feeling you're going to be higher on him than the other 3 of us here. So I'm gonna let you take this one here.
Yeah, so Jayden Higgins, this is the guy I had mentioned earlier, kind of in the pre-podcast room. My eyes and my grading scale did not perfectly align here with what I thought about Jayden Higgins. I was kind of, my eyes lean more to that third round range, but then you add in the athleticism and the size and weight profile, and that's going to boost up a player's grade. So he is in that 50, 55-ish range for me, and I'm okay with that because I know what he can be. He completely has grown and changed as a route runner from 2023. He was lower on my board starting summer scouting. I think he was probably in that like 15 to 20th ranked of my wide receivers. I have him a hair under 6'4", like that 6'3" range. But yeah, super huge. His hands are great. Red zone threat. Funny story about that. My friend is into sports betting, and he asked for a lock, and Jayden Higgins was on a streak of 7 straight touchdowns in 7 straight games. And then the game that my friend bet on him to score a touchdown, he did not score a touchdown. So
ruined his parlay. Great job, Cole.
No Christian McCaffrey treatment.
But he's super fluid on those vertical routes. His hips are looser for a bigger guy. He takes longer strides, it's kind of odd, but for a bigger guy, it makes sense. But like his strides are super long, and it does cause him to be a little bit slower in and out of his breaks. With that being said, though, he really does a great job at selling with his hips, out breaking routes specifically, and the digs. My favorite routes to watch of Jayden Higgins, long catch radius, strong hands. This is like everything that you love about Tet McMillan. You can get in Jayden Higgins later in the second, or probably earlier in the second is where I would assume he'd go.
Cool. So, Bill, what do you think?
So I'm going to be the negative Nancy here, and I am significantly lower than Cole is on Jayden Higgins. You see it. Yeah, you see the size profile, 6'4", 6'3", 215, and you see a guy that he can really excel in the red zone. But my big things with him, number one, is there's an issue with his long speed. And I know 6'4", 215, how fast does he really need to be? I would say if he doesn't run under a 4.55, I'm concerned, just because this is a guy that doesn't have that game-breaking long speed for me. In addition to that, his release package against press coverage, if you press him for a big body receiver, he should be able to fight through that press and get by people. There were times I watched several times that he struggled with it, and press coverage put him in a blender. In addition to that, I also see issues. He's a willing run blocker, but he doesn't use his size well. He knows how to use it well when he's in a jump ball scenario, but when he's in press coverage, when he's in run blocking, I just don't see him using it well. All in all, this is still a very good receiver if you're looking for a big body X receiver. I have him in day 3, late 4, round 5 grade. I compare him kind of like to an Andre Ishivas for the Cincinnati Bengals, kind of a wide receiver 3 to start, could play some wide receiver 2 for you. I would not expect him to be a full-time Robin his first year in the league. So if you're drafting him for that, you're going to be disappointed. But Randall, how do you feel about Jayden Higgins?
All right, I'm going to meet. I guess I'm going to meet in the middle, and then piggyback off a couple things Cole said as well. I do like his size is great. Everything. I do agree, Bill, with the with run support. To be honest, the only time I saw him really as a good blocker is if he's one-on-one on the outside with a DB sort of thing, and it's kind of maybe coming to his side on an outside run sort of thing. But he definitely needs to work on his blocking. I do agree that he needs to work on physicality when he's running through it. He's good at the stem route on elusiveness, but sometimes on a smaller DB, he can get caught in between them. Like if he's coming at him, DB can just kind of grab him, throw him off his leverage a little bit, and then his timing's off completely. So I saw that as well. But overall, when I feel like Jayden Higgins, when I'm watching Jayden Higgins, is this kind of Iowa State, in my opinion, and his off-target throws. I feel like a lot of the times when he's playing, there's a lot of off-target throws to Jayden Higgins. I don't know if he's maybe throwing them on the outside because of his catch radius sort of thing, but a lot of bad off-target throws, and I don't like. And I do know that he's very quick-footed and he's good in the short throws. But I would like to see him, as you mentioned, Bill, in those long ones, even though if he has a barely any separation, if it's one-on-one, I'd rather see him throw it and give him a shot at those contested catches based on his size instead of not. And I felt like he didn't get those looks as much as he should have. 44% of his throws in 2024 were from 0 to 9 yards, so they were the short. And then, if you look at, albeit it was Arkansas State, his yards per route run was 5, which was the highest I saw, and his average depth of target was 20, and he had like 4 catches for 111 yards sort of thing. I kind of would like to see more consistent games like that than more of like the 7 for 65 sort of thing. So if an NFL offense will start using him more in those deep shots, I think he can be better, and I think I would more lean towards Cole than Bill. So hopefully he gets right in that right system. I have a 4th round grade on him, like right at the start of day 3, maybe sort of thing, and go from there.
Okay. And I want to let everybody that's listening know you are about to hear a lot about Jayden Higgins because he has accepted a Senior Bowl invite, and we have 2 Senior Bowl podcasts. We have a Senior Bowl podcast on Mondays, and you're going to hear about them on Mondays. And we have a Senior Bowl podcast on Fridays with Bill and Cole and a few others, and you're going to hear about them again on Fridays. So you're about to hear about Jayden Higgins more than a significant number of wide receivers that we've already covered in this channel. So definitely looking forward to seeing how he performs at the practices, because I think that's going to, let's say, take the gap, right? We have a huge gap on the player. Some people are saying round 2. Some people are saying round 5. Yeah. Let's try to narrow that down to, do we have a more narrow grade on the player? So, okay. So Ja'Cory Brooks from Louisville. So Bill, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So Ja'Cory Brooks from Louisville, 6'2", 190. This is a guy, really strong hands and concentration at the catch point. He can secure passes away from his frame. You don't have to worry about chest catching with him. A really deceptive route runner with head fakes. Randall, you posted a clip on your X at Randall Slifer where you showed off that head fake maneuver and that shiftiness, and I really enjoyed it. He's also a really dangerous yak threat, especially on screens, bubble screens, slants. This is a guy, if he gets in open space, he can take it to the house. He also is a 4-down player. This is a guy you can use him in all 4 downs, including special teams, punt return, kick return, those types of things as well. He's also a very versatile athlete, has a track background. So he's done sprinting, he's done long jumps. So he also could have some improved functionality with his speed and his pads. The biggest things that I have as far as negatives for Ja'Cory Brooks is obviously there is some injury history concerns. The shoulder injury last year that limited him. His route tree does need a little bit of expansion and refinement. Currently relies more on his physical gift than a technical standpoint. So I'd like to see him work on his technique, which is really good technique to begin with, using more of that. In addition to that, there have been some conflicting reports about his speed. I've seen some people say 4.4. I've seen some people say 4.6. So this is a guy that I'm going to be watching in the postseason circuits, the bowls, the combines, on what he actually runs, because I think it's going to do a huge impact to his overall grade. Right now, my current grade for him would be basing it on if it is a 4.6 40 time, right around round 5 is where I would take Ja'Cory Brooks, just because he is a little bit slower. And if you're going to be a little bit slower, I'd want you to have a larger size profile like a Jayden Higgins than I would a 6'2", 190. My comp for him, it's a little bit cheap because they both went to Louisville, but Devontae Parker is what I'm looking at here when I see Ja'Cory Brooks. But Cole, what'd you have on Ja'Cory Brooks?
I first want to start this out with shout out to all the Louisville fans who enjoyed my tweet yesterday about Ja'Cory, including Ja'Cory himself for liking it. So I just wanted to highlight that because that was a huge thing for me. So I love Ja'Cory Brooks. He's huge, my guy. Might be my favorite wide receiver in the class, if I'm going to be honest. But behind Jack Beck, shout out Randall for that. there's a couple things I have. I'm going to start with the negatives and then go to the positives. His short routes, specifically the shallow crossers, the drags, even like kind of the slants, his hands get a little inconsistent. There was a play in the Miami game where he just flat out dropped a drag, and it was weird because there was probably like 30 yards of space, and normally that's a catch Ja'Cory makes. And then another thing that I don't know if it was a Louisville scheme thing or if it was a Ja'Cory Brooks comfortability scheme thing. He always played on the right side. Like he tended to be on the right side on the boundary, which I thought was a little odd because you normally only see that with corners, but I guess that's just where they like to have their ex receiver at. So that's kind of not a negative, but it's a gray flag. It's a little confusing. To the positives though, his hands in traffic for being 190 pounds are way stronger than you would think. His ball tracking is amazing. I'm going to highlight 2 plays from 2023 and 2022, maybe 2021. I'm going to start off with the 2021 play. Famous Bryce Young 97-yard iron bowl drive. 3rd and 10, must have it from like the 30 or 40-yard line. Ja'Cory Brooks gets a back shoulder fade ball, and he's going to the ground as he turns around and makes the catch, and it was the game-tying touchdown that ended up sending Alabama to overtime, eventually winning it with a zig route to John Mechie later in that game. And then 2023, I believe it was the Sugar or the Cotton Bowl against Kansas State. There was a play Bryce Young had thrown it up into almost double coverage. It was a perfect pass on the sideline, and Ja'Cory Brooks was fighting through some contact there and secured the catch, and it was a touchdown. And those are my 2 favorite plays from Ja'Cory Brooks all time. And that's just for me being a Bama fan, but also just from his evaluation is you don't see those plays often from a lot of wide receivers, and he makes them consistently. There's another play in the Miami game where Tyler Show threw a post route late. I don't know if it was an RPO or if it was just a complete late read, but Ja'Cory Brooks had corner was showing outside leverage, and Ja'Cory Brooks just took off with that long speed and cut it inside and was wide open and ended up securing touchdown for Louisville. But it was a late ball, and the safety ended up coming back to it and almost making a play on it. But Ja'Cory Brooks stood strong with his hands, and they ended up losing the game, but it was a big play for Louisville at that point. He does start kind of slow in games. I'm going to keep going back to that Miami game because that was kind of the one where people started looking at him a little bit more in the draft community, where I don't know if he had a catch in the first half. I really don't think he did. A lot of his production came in the second half, which it was a little bit consistent throughout all the other games I had watched, where he was a little bit of a slow starter. He's kind of a guy where you need to get him in rhythm to get going, which can be a pro and a con because once he gets in rhythm, he's almost unstoppable. I have a 3rd to 4th on Ja'Cory, and I'd love for it to be a little higher just because I love the player, but I also love the person. From all accounts, from what I've heard, is he's a great person. He's on the field. He's competitive. He's a leader. He's a mentor to the younger guys. He's awesome as a player, as a person. I love him as a prospect, and I can't wait to see where he goes in the draft.
All right. Well, I don't know what I'm going to talk about because you guys pretty much covered it. But he's obviously had professional throwers throughout his whole entire career, right? Because when he was at IMG for high school, his quarterback was JJ McCarthy, so that's kind of dope, sort of thing. And then, being in Alabama and Louisville, Show's a pretty good quarterback, in my opinion, to be honest. You did bring up the medicals. That's right. Funny, Cole, that you bring it up, how he's always on the right side. He is always on the right side. But what's kind of wild also is that if he's the only one out wide, they will keep him. Like if it's just one wide receiver out wide and it's a running play, they'll throw him on the left side, but it'll never be a passing play. And then he's always on the right side. Very weird. Very much agree. I do really like his route running. I think he's got like a full arsenal at the stem, which is impressive going to the NFL. I think he can do almost all of it. Super savvy at it. Deeper throws, he only needs a little bit of separation because he's good at high point in that ball. He's got good patience in the middle. He can look like a blocker, hold it at the right time, and then take off, and he's got a bunch of separation. I think my flag for him is drops. He's got a 22% rate with 7 drops this year. And watching the Virginia game, he had back-to-back throws in the end zone. One was sticky coverage that he could have held on to, in my opinion, and then one was a crosser on the back line, and he was open and it went through his hand, sort of thing. So back-to-back red zone, that was a little concerning at that point, but it's not a red flag to me because I also don't believe that drops are consistently, this happens in 2024, that's going to happen in 2025. Never make that a yellow flag or a red flag, really. I did have Ja'Cory Brooks a little bit later in my 5th range, but Cole, you made me start watching tape again, and he'll probably move up as the time goes.
Yeah.
Okay, so big finish. We got 3 receivers left. So, Bill, do you want to talk about Tre Harris from Ole Miss?
Absolutely. Tre Harris, 6'2", 205. This guy, he has jump out of the gym athleticism, especially in contested catches. A physical beast, can box out defenders, very versatile as well. I can play him outside. I can play him in the slot, play him on both sides. No issues there. A true red zone nightmare for SEC defenses and defenses in the NFL because of that size profile. That has very good hands, good concentration in traffic. This is a guy that's not going to worry about hearing footsteps and drop the ball. Also has a really good release off of the line, doesn't get jammed up too much by press. He does need a little bit of refinement in his route tree, especially on some of the deeper routes. He seems to round them off and give a clue to defenders and lead into some anticipation with some of those rounder. I'd like to see it be a little more crisp. Even though he has a good, solid set of speed and both short and long speed, I don't think he's ever going to threaten a defense vertically. He's not going to be a burner like a Bond or a Worthy type. This is a guy that's got enough speed to get the job done, but you probably don't want to use him on a bunch of go routes. He could also improve his play strength a little bit, even though he's 6'2", 205. I'd like to see him be a little bit stronger moving forward. But all in all, this is a guy, again, in that same kind of range, round 4, round 5, right at the start of day 3 is where I have Tre Harris. My comp for him, Drake London from the Atlanta Falcons, that same style of big body, prototypical X receiver that you can use on both sides. I think ultimately he starts off probably as a wide receiver 2.5, not necessarily bad and, rusty enough and young enough to be a wide receiver 3, not necessarily good enough to be a wide receiver 2 coming into the league, but I think he could eventually develop into a wide receiver 1 moving forward. But Cole, what did you see on Tre Harris?
Yeah. So size profile is really nice. He's just under that 6'3" threshold. I've spoken on a couple times where I get a little scared with those bigger receivers that are at that like 6'3" and a half plus area. He has a nice weight profile to him. He's really filled out. What Bill said about he doesn't hear footsteps. There's a whole shot against Penn State last year in the Orange Bowl, I think. And it was cover 2, one of my favorite types of throws and coverage beaters, just right in the bucket. Safety was coming down, and Trey held on to it. He might have even caught it over the corner. I don't have the clip on hand with me, but that was something that really jumped out to me when watching my first game of Trey. Another thing, he is super smart. I have not seen in my lifetime a wide receiver check out, or at least a wide receiver in college check out of a route. He had outside leverage from the corner, and whatever the route was, Tre Harris did not like what he had. So he turned to Jackson Dart and signaled for him to make a hot route just for Trey, and it was a slant, and he took it for marginal amount of yards, excuse me. And it's something that pops out on tape all the time is his yak ability, but he just understands the game more than a lot of the wide receivers in this class do. He understands leverages. He's almost like a quarterback out there playing wide receiver. And it's really fun to watch him know leverages and know his body movement and know where he needs to be to make a catch or get open to help Jackson Dart out. I have medical concerns. I believe he hurt the same shoulder twice, and it was a pretty big injury. He was out for the year after like 5 or 6 games this year, and he would have ran away with the Biletnikoff. He had over 1,000 yards in like 5 or 6 games, which is absolutely insane. His production profile was great. He came from Louisiana Tech, I believe, and I'm pretty sure he was still producing there. And he came into Ole Miss and didn't skip a beat and went in and became a wide receiver 1 for them. And while I don't know if he can be a wide receiver 1 at the next level, he can be a guy that can come in and play that power slot. He can play the Z. He can play the X. He's just very positional. He has positional flexibility just because of how smart he is, where he excels at on those short and intermediate routes. Like Bill said, he's not a burner deep and does need refinement on those deep routes. But I can envision him playing the Z and getting in motion and running back and running all sorts of routes, going in the slot, taking on the dirty work from linebackers and chipping defensive linemen because he does play with that edge to him. I can see him being the X and being a jump ball guy or a just go down the field on a go route and make a catch and embarrass the dude that's lined up in front of you. I have a 2nd to 3rd round grade on Tre Harris, a little bit lower than what I wish I could be on, but the medicals do scare me. And I don't know. It's the Ole Miss offense. Ole Miss and Tennessee offenses do scare me. Just always have, always will since Heupel and Kiffin got there. Just I don't know how much of their gimmicks, per se, will work in an NFL offense for evaluating and translating players to the next level.
Yeah, and Cole, to piggyback off that, with his route running and smarts on it, and sometimes when Ole Miss uses them, I think everybody knows, like, watching the tape for him, they have to account for him every single game. And I was watching the Wake Forest game, and basically the Wake Forest game when they were playing, the whole entire half, it took till 6 minutes left in the 3rd quarter to get a target that was not a curl or a screen. So basically they were just running him out on curls and screens, and it was working. He was getting, 8 or 9 yards per reception, stuff like that. But basically that's all he was doing because it was working based on his gravitational pull. 2 people were coming at him. He was opening up a lot of it, and his screen game was working as well. Then you go into the 3rd quarter, and he did like an improvised intermediate route on his first one where it looked like he was coming in. He stopped kind of like a deep whip route, came on the outside, gained like 4 yards of separation, and then got that for like 25 yards, and it was super impressive. Like that game, his yards per route run was like 2.76, and he did that dirty work, got it done, did it, whole 9 yards, got it done, and they won that game by a lot. But then his career, well, this year for 2024, his yards per route run is 5.15. So I think that willingness to kind of just do what's given to him and being able to do that is big for the NFL, and I do love that as well. I love his route running. You're right. His run after the catch is great. He's got a 3rd gear on that. Once he grabs that ball, it looks like he takes off. He's great at locating the ball. I know that he doesn't get a lot of separation on those vertical routes, but I kind of have trusted him in his basketball background to be able to do that. Red zone monster as well. His stats are there. Everything you can see it. I did see the shoulder, but I didn't put it as a flag for me based on his production. I left it there, and I actually have a early 35 to 45 pick range for him.
So I have a question. I'm going to direct it to Cole, but anybody can answer it. So Cole, as I was listening to you, I was thinking, is this the type of wide receiver that plays well when the play becomes non-structured? So like the QB has to break the pocket or they're taking an extra hitch.
Yes. I'm thinking of one play specifically. Jackson Dart got murdered, spun out of the pocket. Tre Harris thought he was sacked, started to keep running, made an awesome catch on the sideline. Just specifically off that, I think that he trusts who's throwing him the football. And while Ole Miss doesn't really get out of structure a lot, you do see those flashes like that where he trusts who's throwing him the ball enough to know that if they get out, they're going to look for Tre Harris. They're going to look for 9, and 9's going to make the catch almost every time.
So I don't hide my Bills fandom, but that was very evident early in this season, like when Josh Allen was playing, that his receivers didn't know what to do when the play broke down.
Oh yeah.
Right. And
they were coming in. They were coming in.
Right. This sounds like a receiver that would suit a running quarterback, whether that's a Lamar Jackson, a Josh Allen, but a quarterback that breaks the pocket.
Bryce Young.
Which one did you say?
Bryce Young.
Okay. Yep. That's who this sounds like to me, is that if you get him with a quarterback that plays out of structure, scramble drill type scenarios, this sounds like a really good chemistry fit with an offense like that. So that was what I gathered from listening to the three of you. So thank you for gratifying that aspect. So Evan Stewart from Oregon. Cole, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah. This is Denzel Burke's worst nightmare. I'm going to start off with that. Thinking of one play specifically, deep poster go ball.
Woo!
Just shot out of the cannon. Denzel Burke's not the greatest athlete, but he was sticky in coverage, and then he started regressing after the Oregon game. And Evan Stewart just took advantage that he can out athlete almost anybody, and he sure as hell did in that game, because that was the game that I watched first this year, and the game I will keep going back to justify why I think Evan Stewart has the potential to be a top 50 selection. While that is not my grade on him, I think that's his ceiling, is a wide receiver 2, play the Z, play in the slot, get him in motion, get him in space. He's going to be shifty. That entire Oregon core is just based off of shiftiness and spacing. His idea of spacing is there. I don't know if it's executed all the time. I think he knows what he wants to do, and it just doesn't always happen on film, which is a little concerning. Don't know if that's because of his smaller size, where he can kind of get chucked out if it's like we're dropping outside linebackers into curl flats, or we're buzzing them or whatever. It's the size profile. He's 175 pounds. It's concerning, especially on a 5'11" wide receiver, as opposed to Tez Johnson, who's like 170 and like 5'8" or 5'9". So I am a little bit concerned about that size profile, but he's a speedster. He's a typical Mike Mayock, John Gruden selection that would surprise you on draft night, and he takes you in the first round. Shout out Henry Ruggs. I guess not really shout out Henry Ruggs, but
right.
That's okay. He might be watching the podcast, from his cell, so that's okay.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But he does remind me of Henry Ruggs in that way. He's a vertical guy. You can get him off in slants, and if you get him off in a hitch, I don't necessarily trust him to get the most separation, because his route running is not very refined. But if he is able to get off coverage and he gets a quick out or a quick hitch and he's able to turn up field, he's going to get an extra 5 to 10 just off his speed alone, and can be a home run hitter on any given play. Mm-hmm. So those are things that you all obviously highlight with Evan Stewart. Again, the route running is inconsistent. The hands are a little bit inconsistent. But, yeah, this is a guy I have firmly in my third-round grade pile. He can be a slot guy, could end up developing into a Z for a team where you're getting him not necessarily on the line of scrimmage, but you get him off the ball. You can get him in motion. This is a Chiefs pick as it stands now, but they don't really need him anymore. But that's kind of the idea. You would like him. And honestly, this is a New York Jets pick if Todd Monken gets hired by the Jets. But that's kind of where I stand with Evan Stewart.
I like Cole. It's your second podcast in, and you are planting flag after flag. I absolutely love it. Bill, what do you have on Evan Stewart?
Yeah, so Cole hit the nail on the head with a lot of things with Evan Stewart. This is a guy. He's gonna blow the doors off when it comes to speed. There's reports of running 4.3 40. I've even heard some sub 4.3. So I'm looking at that combine. I can't wait to see what he runs. But My biggest things with him is that he really struggles against press when corners get very handsy and they get into him. It really knocks him off his game. And with that physical coverage, his route running, Cole kind of talked about it a little bit, but the integrity of it wanes a little bit. But this is a guy, my nickname for him is NASA, because he does his best work in space, right? This is a guy, yards after the catch type of guy, bubble screen. You get him the ball in space, he's going to break one and take it to the house. One thing I would be curious to see if he is open to at the next level is kick return and punt return coverage. Put his speed in kick return and punt return and watch him fly. My grade for him is right around that same range as Cole's. This is a round 3. It reminds me a lot of Deshaun Jackson when he was at Cal. That same style of slot guy, can play on the boundary a little bit, but he's going to make his living in the slot, just blowing by people. Randall, what have you got on Evan Stewart?
Yeah, I had a little bit of Deshaun Jackson as well in it. I had a little bit of Devonta Smith as well, sort of style. But I do like his speed, and I'm not going to harp too much on it. But as a statistical standpoint, this year he caught 6 deep shots of 20+ air yards or more. But all those balls, the average depth of target was over 50. So they're slinging it to him. They're just throwing it as far as he can, catch it, sort of thing. So those long balls are long balls. And sometimes Dylan Gabriel will throw those moon balls. And what I was impressed with him on those is if those high risers he's really good at controlling the body, locating the ball, and sticking with it on those, which is impressive for that kind of slim frame. Still trying to fight sometimes. I did see where fighting with DB, sometimes he loses leverage. But on those moon balls, he did pretty well to kind of fight back to stay in the play, sort of thing. So I was impressed by that. Route running does need a little bit of work. He does have good games against top teams, which I like, over 100 yards against Boise State, torched Ohio State when we started with it and stuff like that. So I do enjoy that. I did have him probably actually right around the same as you guys, right around round 3 sort of thing. His hands are good. I didn't see much in the yak in 2024, aside from 2023, to be honest with you. I saw him getting the balls on those screens and slants and kind of falling down. Taking the first hit and falling down. He averaged 3.2 yards after the catch per reception this year with only 3 forced missed tackles. So the elusiveness was not there as much this year as it was last year, but he still has it in his bag. But I do have him in that round 3 range.
Awesome. So we have one player left, but before we go to Travis Hunter, the wide receiver, I want to say thank you to everybody that is watching the podcast. If you have not already subscribed to the Draft Professor channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, give NFL Draft Fanatic a follow on Twitter, because this channel has draft content every day. Now, before each of the other 3 have a chance for a commercial break here, I definitely want to give a shout out to Bill, Randall, and Cole. So Cole, you've been with us at this point for 3 weeks, and it's been awesome, and I look forward to hearing more content. Bill and Randall, we had an idea that started on October 18th, and while we have debated which wide receivers get covered on which episode, we always agreed that Travis Hunter was going to be the last player we covered on the last episode.
Yeah.
Here we are, 2 months and 9 episodes later. So
love it.
Yeah. So everybody that is watching, thank you very much for watching. Randall, you want to tell everybody kind of who you are, how they can find your content?
Oh, yeah. At Randall Slifer on Twitter and Blue Sky. That is where you can find me. I do everything through there. Right now, honestly, I'm pretty new to the scouting game and podcasting game, so I'm just getting my feet in the water, getting my toes wet and stuff like that, and just learning as we go.
Fantastic. Cole.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Kolp_NFL, all lowercase. I do everything. Just posted a big board today. Just posted some wide receiver rankings today that we'll harp on in about, 15, 20 minutes or so. I look at gems. I look at players in the transfer portal. I look at any and all players that get recommended. I love the scouting aspect of football. And, yeah, that's pretty much all about me.
And Bill.
So you can find me a little bit of everywhere. So on X, I am at Sparks Scouting. That's my main hub. I also do work with at Draft Detectives. I'm a writer and analyst for CadesDraftRoom.com as well. You'll also see me here on the NFL Draft Fanatic podcast with Jim, like he talked about earlier in the episode. We're not going anywhere on Friday nights after the wide receiver and cornerbacks episode. We're going to cover some Senior Bowl content. We're going to talk about the guys in Mobile and hopefully do Jim Nagy and some of those guys justice. But yeah, like Jim said, if you're not already, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe it, make sure you check out all the other videos that we've got. We've got daily draft content. Share it with your friends, share it with your enemies. If you don't want to talk to them, send it to them in an email, tweet at them, put it in their DMs, just share out the content. We love talking draft content. So anytime that people recommend players to us, we'll take a look. And again, I am at Spark Scouting. So if you've got players that you think I should look at, drop me a line and I'll take a look. But Jim, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Well, and so Bill, you get the big finish here with Travis Hunter. So this one's all you. So thank you.
Yeah. So Travis Hunter, the wide receiver. So we talked about him as a corner. And the cool thing is a lot of the traits that he has as a corner are going to translate to his wide receiver. You know, when I talked about it earlier with the plus click and close ability, the way he can just click and close, that not only helps him in transitions as a corner, but breaks as a wide receiver. He can break in and out of his routes very smoothly, very quickly. He has really good change of direction ability. This is a guy that can turn and stop on a dime. So that helps him as a corner, helps him as a wide receiver. A natural hands catcher. This is a guy that's not going to drop a lot of catches, that's not going to have those issues, things like that. As a wide receiver, obviously there are some small glaring issues with his routes, especially as you get later into games, they get kind of rounded off. Part of that is because you've asked him to play 100+ snaps a game, 5,000 feet above sea level. Anybody's going to round their routes off at that point. But all in all, I already talked about Travis Hunter earlier. He is my number one overall player on my big board. But what I will say about Travis Hunter, the wide receiver, I think that he should be a full-time corner with wide receiver packages on offense rather than the other way around, full-time wide receiver corner packages. I'm probably in the minority in that aspect. But Randall, what do you have on Travis Hunter, the wide receiver?
Well, I'm going to jump in that minority and say that he's a better cornerback than a wide receiver. But I really like, if we're talking about packages and how to lines, I think it would be kind of interesting to use him a lot on third downs and see if you can use him in third downs and then go trial and error on that, because I really do like his route running. His IQ obviously is so high. When you watch Travis Hunter, it's is he a good cornerback because he's a wide receiver sort of thing? Is he using his wide receiver skills for the cornerback and the cornerback for the wide receiver sort of thing? And what intertwines? So I do think that his third down and his IQ against the defenses can make him move those chains well. So I'd like to see him in just like third down role in the NFL and then maybe expand it if he excels well. But his versatility is huge. 7 100-yard games this year with 7 games of multiple receiving touchdowns. There's games when his average depth of target is 6. There's some when it's 15 to 16. So they give him the whole bag sort of thing. His route running is good. His at the stem, he kind of treats it more like a crossover and like in a basketball sort of thing. He tries to burn them in elusive, big shoulder shrugs, big head turn sort of thing to burn him. I do wonder how well that will go in the NFL when people recognize that. But he also tries to do a cat and mouse with a cornerback. I feel like that's because he is a cornerback. He tries to get that hips turned to the back of him and then do a double move to kind of lose him. So I do enjoy watching that, and I hope that does kind of happen in the NFL as well. I didn't put him in my wide receiver rankings because I did see him as a better cornerback, but I would be interested to see how he is used in the NFL. Cole, how about you?
Yeah, so Travis Hunter is – actually, I'm not even going to spoil it. I love Travis Hunter as a wide receiver more than I love him as a corner. I think it might just be a problem with the class and how I feel about the class as a whole, where maybe if Travis Hunter's in last year's class, I'm not so wide receiver over corner, and I'm more corner over wide receiver like Randall and Bill are. But you see the natural separation. He sells his routes well, hits them with the pump fakes and the head turns and the crossovers with his feet, like Randall said. His hands are consistent. And for 6'1", he does have relatively long arms. So that catch radius is way bigger than the average eye would think when they see 6'1". And as we kind of talked about with corners that are 185 being a tiny bit undersized in the weight profile, wide receivers that are 185 are less of a problem being that light, in my eyes. You see it with Zay Flowers and a couple other guys in the league. I think Xavier Worthy's under that as well. A few other guys that I can't think of right now, but I'm less concerned about the weight profile at wide receiver than I am at corner. He doesn't really struggle beating press. He doesn't really struggle beating zone. He doesn't really struggle beating man. He's very well-rounded. And the athleticism jumps out as soon as you click. Any position you want to watch, corner, wide receiver. Travis Hunter is probably the most athletic player in college football as a whole. He's a generational athlete, and while I don't think he is a generational prospect as a whole, you draft him number 1 overall because what you could get is all the way up sky high to the Hall of Fame. And the floor, honestly, in my eyes as a wide receiver, is a 3 Pro Bowl guy over his lifetime as a floor, which is saying a lot because you don't really get many wide receivers that come into the league who are able to become and have the ceiling to become a well-decorated player like I believe Travis Hunter can be. I don't necessarily have a direct player comp, but I have a sort of scheme or I guess usage comp, and that's Marcus Jones of the Patriots. Just he's played wide receiver a little bit, not many snaps granted, but he has for the Patriots. He's even scored a touchdown as a wide receiver. Has played corner, and I don't think Travis Hunter's a slot corner like Marcus Jones is. And I don't think that Marcus Jones is honestly half the player at either position that Travis Hunter is. But I think that kind of, whether you want to put him in your wide receiver package and have him only come in on 3rd and long on the passing downs for your team, or vice versa, you want to have him on almost full-time as a corner and bring him on those guaranteed passing downs as a wide receiver. Either way you want to flip it, it's going to work for Travis Hunter. And I firmly believe that Travis Hunter has the highest ceiling in the class and is the best athlete in the country and one of the best athletes we have seen in the last 3 to 4 years even.
Yes. Shout out to that Marcus Jones, because I remember when whether it was a reverse or a pass against Buffalo, and he housed it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
We were like, who is that? Because I think that was his first wide receiver snap of the season, and they saved it for Buffalo.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yep.
Cole, if the Panthers had the first pick, how would you want Carolina to use
Abdul
Travis
Carter.
Hunter?
Abdul Carter.
Huh?
Abdul Carter. Guy right there.
Oh, yeah.
Abdul Carter.
No. I'm saying the Panthers chose Travis Hunter. Like, Carolina first pick, chose
Wide
Travis
receiver.
Hunter.
Wide
Like,
receiver.
full time.
Ooh. Yeah. The DB corner is there. It's nice. You got J.C. Horn, Mike Jackson, Charles Smith Wade, Dane Jackson regressed from his Buffalo days, I will say, but yeah, I don't really see a need to play Travis Hunter at corner more than wide receiver if you bring him to Carolina or even New England, or honestly, if you brought him to like even New York or Las Vegas, maybe Las Vegas more than New York, you're going to want, I'd say wide receiver more than corner for a handful of teams, but it can go either way. It depends on how the coaching staff use him and et cetera, et cetera.
For sure.
And I will add one more thing to that too with Travis Hunter. I know a lot of people, it's been out there in the space that if you draft him top 5, you have to take him as a wide receiver. You can't use him as a corner. Corners shouldn't go that high. Since 2016, there's been 6 corners that have gone in the top 5 in the NFL draft. of those 6, Jalen Ramsey, Denzel Ward, Jeff Okudah, Derek Stingley Jr., Sauce Gardner, Devin Witherspoon. That's a 5 out of 6 chance you're going to get a stud in your cornerback room. So just because you're picking at 3 or 4 does not automatically say, hey, picking that high's got to be a wide receiver. I think ultimately you have to look at what's best for your team. I think if you're going to take Travis Hunter, you need to have a plan in place. The easier of the two would be full-time boundary corner and then put some sort of wide receiver packages, slot packages in, rather than a full-time wide receiver and then you're putting in slot corner packages. Because from an NFL GM perspective, I'm going to question putting my wide receiver 1 up against a tight end or a running back where they could get injured, versus on the other side of the ball as a lockdown boundary corner. Yeah, you're still going to have to tackle, but now I'm also not risking my, $30-40 million investment when I eventually sign him to a wide receiver 1 contract.
Yeah, and I think the contract needs to be discussed because the career earnings for a wide receiver are significantly higher than a corner.
Yep.
And when I say significantly, we're talking in the neighborhood of $5 to $8 million a year. And a wide receiver can play past age 30, whereas a significant number of corners, their likelihood to get a contract after the age of 30 is much lower.
Yep.
So even if he's a corner early in his career, by the time he hits his 5th year, he'll want to be a wide receiver because that's more than likely how he would get paid.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty unprecedented, so I'm curious to see how that plays out.
100%. It like Jim talked about, when we get to that 5th year in those contract negotiations, it's going to be pretty fun to see how they kind of handle the arbitration of that. And especially say they can't get a deal done and now you go into the franchise tag. Do you tag him as a corner? Do you tag him as a receiver? So that's a whole nother can of worms that you have to open up.
Yeah, and there's precedence with the Player Association, and I'm hoping I get the tight end name right. Julian Thomas played tight end for the Broncos when Peyton Manning was there. Do I have the name right?
Julius Thomas, maybe?
I say
Julius, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And he wanted to be considered a wide receiver because when he got franchise tagged, there was like a $7 to $10 million difference between the franchise tag for a tight end and the franchise tag for a wide receiver. Mm-hmm. So the league has seen this before. It's just not with wide receiver corner, it's with tight end wide receiver. There was additional logic when Buffalo drafted Dalton Kincaid over a wide receiver. Bills Mafia was clamoring for a wide receiver, but as soon as it was a tight end, it was pointed out Kincaid is a big wide receiver. He's a big slot wide receiver, but he's going to get paid like a tight end, which is actually going to save the team about $7 million a year on the salary cap. Right? So, exactly. I mean, the NFL teams are already thinking like this. They're not going to come out and say that they're thinking like that, but they are, kind of thing. So,
yeah, I'm a little indifferent on that, just because we changed scheme when we got Dalton Kincaid is because the reason, we basically couldn't run the ball until we got James Cook and then went into 12 personnel. And we were trying to figure out how to run the ball for the 4 years that we had Josh Allen, and we were just letting him throw 45 times. So picking him, I don't think financially was in their head that much as the more scheme changing. But I get it. I know exactly what you mean. Because, it's weird to see GMs having to nickel and dime millions, right?
Fair enough. So we're going to kind of wind this podcast down. I see it as 10 to 9 Eastern time. Mm-hmm. And I know that, Randall, you're an hour behind, but you guys want to take like 15 minutes and come back at 5 after the hour to do the wide receiver rankings?
Absolutely.
Okay. So for everybody watching, if you follow the NFL Draft Fanatic page, there's going to be another podcast coming in about 15 minutes where the 4 of us are going to go over our wide receiver rankings. But again, before we close this out, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. This channel has draft content every day. If you enjoyed hearing about these positions, we have covered every position minus quarterbacks on the channel so far. So you can get running backs and linebackers on Monday. You can get tight ends on you can get tight ends on Wednesday with Randall. You can get DBs on Tuesday with Bill. We have some offensive tackle and edge episodes coming at you on Wednesday. We just finished interior offensive line and interior defensive line. So if you're interested in those positions, we've done 6 episodes covering approximately 40 players at each position. So you'll be able to get scouting reports just like this format. It's just different people giving the reports. So we have covered the top 175 players in the draft. And we've covered 225 players to give you the top 175. So there's a lot of content out there, fresh. And guys, when we started this in October, I had no idea that it would look this good when we finished. But Bill, thank you. Randall, thank you. Cole, thank you very much. And we will see everybody in about 15 minutes.